Hey everybody, how's it going? So welcome back to Reigate Lake, welcome back to Reel Up My Park from scratch. This is our super realistic park that we're building in Planet Coaster, and this is episode number 3. Thank you so much for all of your interactions and everything from the first 2 episodes. The community has just reacted so positively to this build, it's just really quite overwhelming. So thank you to everybody who's subscribed, everybody who's commented, everybody who's asked questions, everybody who's liked, just interacted in general. It really does genuinely mean the world. And like I say, in all of my other episodes, bringing you guys along for this journey makes this so much more worthwhile. So please carry on doing that, because it makes it absolutely worth it. And so in the first couple of episodes, we were dealing with the entrance area itself. So we were dealing with our ticket areas, we were dealing with the turnstiles, we were dealing with the box office, the toilets, the restaurant, the merry-go-round, the gift shop, the lockers, and also the guest services area as well. So to give you an idea of the kind of detail and everything that we're going for, this is kind of it. All of the offices have a purpose, they have a space, and they have equipment. All of the stuff that we need for tickets and everything are all here, and everything's detailed to the finest specification. And I think my favourite part of this build so far is this part of the box office, where the sun's coming through the skylight, and it's just this onslaught of marketing and colour, and I think this has just come across really well. I like how this is done, and like I say, we did the restaurant in the last episode that we didn't quite finish, and we'll finish at some point when we come back over this way. But it kind of gives that impression of a proper restaurant, doesn't it? Very realistic in appearance. And then likewise with the gift shop, how gift shop is all fully kitted out. It looks like it would be a gift shop. It's open. People are walking through shelves and stuff. It's very open. It's very much what you'd expect from a theme park gift shop, and that's what we're going for here. We're going for that ultra realistic look. And I don't want to do a long intro to this one, because I want to get straight into it. So we're dealing with a British theme park, and we're dealing with a more modern British theme park, and so we're taking our cues very much from the likes of Thorpe Park, Drayton Manor, maybe even Flamingo Land and Oakwood, in the sense of being a bit more lightly themed and generic, and possibly a little bit more sparse. But that means then that we need to be considerate with the rides that we're using and the roller coasters that we're using, because here in the UK we have to kind of please our neighbours, because our neighbours around will just complain about noise. They don't like to see height on the sight line and everything, and so theme parks will normally be restricted to what they can actually build, and they'll be considerate to what they can build. Alton Towers, prime example, you can't build above tree height. Thorpe Park, for example, can't build anything higher than Stealth because of Heathrow nearby, and because of the planning applications for Runnymede Council and everything. So we sort of have to be considerate with that. We can't go down the US route of putting massive roller coasters in. Like we would never see in the UK a roller coaster on the scale of Steel Vengeance, for example, or Behemoth or anything like that. We would do ours a little bit more cleverly. We would use terrain. We would use everything like that. So that's what I kind of want to go for in this park, that sense of Britishness, where all of our roller coasters are smaller but pack more of a punch than the big beasts would. And so I want to focus on this area down here, really. So I know already, and we've talked about this, I definitely want to put some kind of backstage area in here, like the warehouses and everything that would be here. I don't think this park would need a very big warehouse area. I think it would be okay to have a relatively small one. I do also want to put a railway along here somewhere, just to give that impression, because that's going to then be lakeside when we put the lake in. So I kind of want the lake to be around about this position, but don't think that's going to be this episode. And that leaves us then with this little pocket of land here to put a roller coaster. And so normally I would build these sort of parks in a chronological order, where I build the rides that would have been built as they would have been built in the age order. So I would be over here working on a ride, over here working on a ride, and then you join it. But for this series we need to be a bit more considerate, so we need to build out of sequence. So I'm thinking the roller coaster that would go here would be more of a tight, compact, more modern roller coaster. And I'm toying with the idea, and I don't know what I'm going to use yet, but I'm toying with the idea of either having a wooden coaster so that it sits quite nicely on the actual sightline along the side of the park, or a Eurofighter because they're really quite compact, or even maybe an SLC. Because it might feel like that this park needs an SLC. So I want to put that into this sort of area, squeeze it in here somewhere, but I don't know yet. I'm literally talking before I've even started to plan out on what I want to do with this area. So anyway, I'm going to crack on with the building. Let's get on with the episode, and I will see you for the first update. Alright, so we've settled for a Eurofighter in the end, and this is sitting quite nicely in the space that I've given it. We've got a plaza area feeding the middle bit, so I've decided to make it a bit more of a destination area. It's only going to have one ride, it's only going to have a couple of shops. It's not going to be a busy area, and it's going to be fed by this one path. And when you're dealing with Planet Coaster in the way that it deals with compact rides and the Heartline rolling, there's a few trade-offs that you do need to have, particularly when you start to smooth out the track, because if you're using the banking offset for your curves and everything, when you smooth the track, it then gets rid of some of that, so you have to almost overcompensate for that banking offset. I've talked about this in the previous video anyway, where I do the B&M Flawless coaster. So this is the layout that we've got anyway. So we've got the main station, which is at almost a right angle to the main plaza area that's feeding it, so that we've got the entrance and the exit either side. And I've decided to cattle pen the queue and then bring it right the way round to the front and now back into the plaza area, just so that we can keep everything sort of combined and together. And then you go into the lift hill, and this is one of the things that I don't really like about the in-game version of the Eurofighter, in the sense that it dictates this angle of descent and how tall that descent is. What you in an ideal world be looking for would be to have this smooth transition down, where you go from the top and you can dictate what your angle of descent is. But this works fine. I mean, it does what it needs to do. It's a bit jank here, but again, you have to sort of trade that off with what the game can actually physically do, because if you follow this round symmetrically, then you end up not having a lift hill that's tall enough for this actual ride, or for any kind of Eurofighter, in fact. So you sort of have to just make believe. Going to the first loop, that's pretty traditional with Eurofighters, and then into a bit of an airtime hill, into an Immelmann that comes round, and these Immelmanns on Eurofighters are really quite snappy, so they don't start to do the roll halfway up like most other Immelmanns. You actually do a full 180 upside down, and then it quickly whips you round. And again, the game doesn't really like you doing that, but I've been able to achieve that here to an extent. And then it comes around into a turn and into a brake run, into a real quick steep drop, steep descent. This is quite typical of Eurofighters, like Saw the Ride at Thorpe Park, for example, does this. And into an overbank turn, into a 0G roll, and then into sort of like a bank to the right, and then a helix down to the left, and into a brake run. And I've decided to do the brake run flat on this one, because it also needs to serve as part of the service area as well, so this needs to be accessible. So I've sort of done it as a straight brake run rather than as a peaked one or banked one. And so I've then also just come along here and I've put the railway line in where I want the railway line to interact with the actual coaster itself. And I liked this idea that you'd have railway line queue and coaster all in the same shot, so I can just put the fencing and everything up all along here. And then the other side will be the lake. So once we've put that in, this will be like the lake edge. So you get sort of like the view and the reflection and everything in the water of the coaster. And in the UK, we actually quite like our Eurofighters. I mean, if you also include the Smiler, we've got 4. So we've got Speed at Oakwood, Rage at Adventure Island, and then Saw the Ride at Thorpe Park. And then, say, if you include the Smiler as being a Eurofighter rather than the Infinity Coaster, then we've got 4. And that's because you can fit a lot of coaster in a small space. And this is what this park is really, really going for. And then elsewhere, I've just put in where I want the railway station. I wanted the trains to be long. I didn't want them to be short trains, like typically the game allows you to have 3, but I wanted this to be a longer train. And I've also started to put in the backstage area as well, which I don't think would need to be very big of a backstage area. Not for this park. I think a lot of the services would be taken care of at the sides of rides for this park, as opposed to having one massive backstage area like some of the other parks that you may see. So I may also have a second backstage area down this way as well that would feed sort of this part of the park, and then this top one here would feed this top part of the park. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. In terms of the queue, I've decided to cattle pen it because it saves so much more space, but I also wanted to have some kind of ride interaction going along as well. So I wanted you to be able to walk along the vertical loop and walk around it, walk underneath it, and experience it in the early days of the queue, so that when you get to the cattle pen, you sort of already know what to expect, and then you can see from the cattle pen everything that you've got with the vertical lift. And so the vertical lifts on Eurofighters can be quite daunting, and that's one of the things that they do really, really well. Is because it's a vertical lift, people get quite frightened of it, and so that works out quite nicely that you can see it from the the cattle pen. Whoops. In terms of theming, then I'm going to keep this super generic. I'm going to keep this not themed at all to anything specific. It's going to be that real generic theming. We're going to have maintenance area in this area here, photo area here. I think this is probably going to be some kind of game store. And I don't know whether I'm going to use the in-game games or whether I'm going to create one yet. I don't know. Haven't quite decided. And then this one I think is going to be a food stall, just because it services quite nicely. It's out of the way. It's sort of like there, in and out. If you're wanting something to eat when you're here, you can just pop in without actually causing too much of a bother in this plaza area and then come back. Or if you're coming from the ride, then you can also do the same. You can grab something to eat on the way out. So this is very much taking quite a few cues, I think, from G-Force Drayton Manor before it was demolished, in the sense that was quite imposing on the area. It took up a lot of space and you could walk through it and you were sort of immersed within that ride and you can just see it all around you. So that's kind of the cues that I'm taking here. So with that in mind, I'm going to carry on with this update. So this is the Eurofighter. Colour scheme I might change. I don't know if it's going to stay yet. Depends on what theming I'm using. So anyway, let's cut to the next update, shall we? Alright, so we've got a lot to show you in this update then, and we've got ourselves a new station building and a maintenance building, and there's a lot of finite details that I've put into this. So unlike previous updates and episodes where I've been looking through the build and doing it piece by piece, layer by layer, I've done it slightly differently this time. I've pretty much almost finished the station building and the maintenance area, apart from the roof that you see on here. And so I've done that slightly differently this time so I can show you the level of detail that goes into the whole project as opposed to spreading it across the whole episode, if you like. So here we are fighting with the autosave and our new areas here. So you can see that I've already started to top off the roofing and everything on this station building, and we've got ourselves a nice little maintenance building, and I've started to put, I don't know if you can see it on the recording, the fences around the actual coaster itself. And so this is what we're dealing with inside the maintenance area. So I've sort of lifted and shifted this from one of the real life maintenance areas for a different manufacturer of coaster. And so I've seen this kind of principle in real life, and I've replicated it as closely as I can with Planet Coaster in mind. So there's a few differences, a few nuances that you have when you're doing this sort of thing. But the idea is this metal shed that's got very high, tall windows that do let in the light, but it's not high enough for you to see in or spy in or anything like that, just to create that outside world. And then everything is raised up on a platform, but that platform is hollow underneath, so you can use it for storage of tools and things like pallets, as I've got here, and stuff underneath it. And you may also find some kind of electric circuits and everything that live underneath here. So this is very much a very real setup. The couple of things that you sort of have to squint and believe for realism rather than actually being able to achieve it in the game is the fact that this chair here would actually go through these holes. So can we just squint and pretend that this is probably a solid surface? I mean, I've put it in as a metal grating just for decoration purposes more than anything else. But this is very much realistic of what you would find. We don't have anything in the Theme Maker's Toolkit that are like toolboxes or blue roll holders or like industrially typed stuff that I can put on the walls, but if I did, that sort of stuff would be all along here. I had a look and there's just nothing on there that's in there. So I've just represented it by filling it out with boxes and papers and stuff that's in game. And so over here we've got these electricity cabinets, and this would be the main electricity panel for the actual ride itself. So all of the electricity for the station, for the lift hill, for the brakes, everything else would come into here, and this would be almost like an internal substation, if you like. And you'd have all of your control panels, and you'd have your central computer systems all in here that are regulating the block brakes and the distances between trains and feeding the information console that you have in the station area. All of that is going to be in here. So I've just started to pull this together. You would also have things like emergency stop functionalities, and you'd have emergency cut-offs, and you can also, from within this area as well, you can also operate the transfer track from here too. So you can actually stand inside and you can move the transfer track. I've made sure that this is big enough to host all of the trains that are out on the track, so this is long enough to host all 3 trains that are there. So you'd have one here, one here, and one here if you wanted to, but you would also use the actual transfer track itself as well as a maintenance area. So the idea is you would bring a train back here, you dismantle it, do what you need to do, transfer it out, and then you'd move the next train back and then the next train back and so on and so forth. I need to put in a van or vehicle access door at the back here. That's something I just need to top off when I do the roof. But this would be where you would load and unload all the parts for this ride. And again, that's another reason that underneath here is actually hollow, is because you might actually store the rides underneath here during the closed season, so you don't have to take it out to a warehouse. You haven't got to transport it, arrange all of that and everything. So you'd also have a computer in this area as well, so you'd have diagnostics that would be in this area. You'd have a system for training and a system to log hours of maintenance and all of that sort of stuff. There would be a bespoke IT system that would be in place. And then I've just put also other things like the flood lighting and the clock, and you've also got a fire exit point, and you've also got a security exit point as well. So the green buttons that you push and it unlocks if you're trapped in and everything. You can't get out in an emergency. So I've also just cluttered it up with lifting equipment and the stuff that I can in game. A couple of ladders that are against the wall and just stuff, just to make it look a bit more industrial. So all I need to do now is just top this off with a flat roof. Don't know if I'm going to make it corrugated or not, or if it's just going to be a smooth roof. I haven't decided yet, but that's the maintenance area anyway. And you come out to the transfer track, and I've put more detail into this than I normally would. So I've tried to keep this as real as I can, in the sense that you've got the transfer track itself, you've got the running rails that would guide the transfer track down, and you've also got electricity cables that run underneath, but they would be underneath I don't know if you can see it very well, they would be underneath the lip of this I-beam, so it's protected from the elements, and then the actual cables themselves are buried within this black bit here. And then underneath that, I've also just put the actual cable as well, and something just to make it run more efficiently across. Yeah, so I've also just removed the footers that come in game, so it now looks like it should just go across. And then I've just put the extra bits on here as well. So there's a couple of electricity stations that are here. There's again an operation panel down here where there's an emergency stop, and then up here there's the same as the control panel, the operation panel with the emergency stop as well. And then underneath the station I've done this as well. So I've made all of the cabling actually lead somewhere, so wherever you see it in this gullyway, it's actually going somewhere and has a purpose. And then so this one, it's almost saying that these cables would come underneath the ground and would either come up to this run here, or it would come elsewhere, and then it would come along here and power this section here. I've also put these lights underneath, so these are supposed to be heaters, so at night they're coloured red, so that you can see the glow. And the idea of that is when the temperature outside is cold, to be able to lower the threshold that you need to close a ride, so lower the threshold that you'd close a ride because of cold weather, so essentially raise the temperature, if you like. You would then have heaters underneath, and what this does is it heats up the rubber in the wheels, and it heats up all of the elements, and it just lubricates everything. So it makes the lubrication on the train actually come to life, and it means that you can operate rides in lower temperatures because you're not actually having to warm the ride up naturally. You're artificially doing it in the station whilst it's standing still. So I've put all of these along here anyway. I've just concreted out the sides and the bottom, and I've also just put some more pillars in just across the top, just to make it look like it's being supported in some capacity, like that. There we go. And then I've also just run the electricity cables as well. I don't know if you can quite see it, coming from again these cable gullyways, and they're coming across and they're powering the wheels. Like that. And then we go the tyre, like see. And you've also got in the station then started to decorate the station, so I've taken a lot of inspiration from Speed at Oakwood. Feels like this park would want to do this not as cheaply as possible. It's still quite high detail. It's got but it's simple. And that's the idea. It's simple and generic. This is what we're looking for. So I've gone with the same colour schemes I've got on the actual ride, so the greens and the browns, and I've alternated some of the colours as well. So we've got a lighter green panel with a dark green corrugation, and then you've also got the I-beams as well. These are brown, but then you've got the I-beam connectors that are a slightly darker brown, and it just accents that. And then every now and again you've got a different colour connector, which I don't know if I'm going to tidy this up. I just need to do some more reference image research to see whether it's consistent. So my plan was to have these ones down here as green and these ones up here as brown, because it would be, this is the green connector for this pillar and this is the brown connector for the two. So I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'm sort of looking at this thinking maybe this should just be the same colour. But I spent absolutely loads and loads and loads of time researching how I-beams connect with each other. It's actually a lot more simple than I thought. It's essentially just a box, it's just a pad, and because we can't really replicate that in Planet Coaster, I've tried using the custom support stuff. It just doesn't quite work. So all I've done is I've just taken one of the beams off the Theme Maker's Toolkit on the workshop, and it's just thick enough for you to be able to hide the join, and so you can sort of say, well, okay, this is representing the actual panel that would be holding these two beams together. And because it's in an arch shape, it supports its own weight, so you haven't got to worry about central vertical supports, horizontal supports going this way, because it's going to support its own weight. And I've just also made this a corrugated roof as well. So this is just the desk. So do you remember the desks from episode 1 and 2 that I made? This is literally just that flat desk and then a beams, everything's beams, just to create the corrugation. And I wanted to make it a dark grey roof with a lighter corrugation, because it fits into this kind of idea. And I've given the whole thing an overhang as well, just because it creates a bit of variation with the actual architecture itself. It just makes it look a little bit different. Given the ride ops then their own space to actually physically work. Nothing elaborate, nothing special, just need to do a bit more detailing. These fire extinguishers need a few signage, bits of signage and stuff. But ultimately I'm quite happy with this, gives them a bit of a shelter. They can see out as well, so if they wanted to, or if they needed to go and look at the lift hill, then they can just poke their head out and have a look at the physical lift hill. They can see it from the ride operation booth. And lighting wise then, I wanted to mix it up slightly. So I wanted it to be a bit industrial and a bit cheap. So here we are with some fluorescent strip lighting. We all know how ugly they can be. And I also wanted to allow the natural light in through the day as well. So we've just got these skylights that are along here. And I've made them as real as I can, so they're all capped off properly. They've all got frames and they're all positioned in exactly the same place. And it's quite nice actually, it lets the light in quite nicely. So it's looking good. And then you've also just got the baggage bays on the opposite side. So I've managed to download a sign actually that I've not put on here yet. There's a baggage hold sign. So I'll see if I can find that and give credit for that one, because it's relatively new. So I noticed it and I can't actually remember who the creator of that is. Here we go with the autosave again. And so I've also then added in the ride ops as well. So again, I just use the business people idle on this one, and I just make sure that I mix up the genders. So we've got a bit of a varied staff, and then I've just outlined the areas within the stations they're allowed to sit. And I know that some people cover their stations completely in different textures and different flooring and everything, and it's something that I'm going to do in future rides, but for this one I wanted to keep this as generic as I could. So it's going to be a concrete pad, it's going to be this felt almost, you know, it's like sandpaper flooring that covers it along here. It's going to have the original lines. We don't tend to use these hatching lines so much in the station. It's quite industrial, it's quite OTT. This yellow line here in the UK would be sufficient. In fact, this would probably also be more than is needed, because you've got the actual the station gates that would stop, and then there isn't much of a gap between the actual station and the train here to fall down. So you would probably get away with having no, I say that because then I start to think about the actual disabled access and guest accessibility. So those that are partially sighted would still need something to tell them that there's a drop there. So okay, you may still actually find a line here. Thinking back, I take that back, but it might not be this thick. But you'll definitely, you would see something there. I've also then just put a couple of bins just here, just so that you can throw your rubbish away, and then just a few signs around, so your internal coming inside, no smoking area signs, your fire exit signs along here. I just need to do some more safety signage, so again, it's the ones that I've only just downloaded. And I love this view from here, by the way. So when you're looking through the station, or you're looking down at this way, so imagine at the moment we've got a roof on here. This view is just so nice, like so industrial and just so but it looks complete. Like, we've tried to hide the building as far away as the maintenance building as far away as we possibly can, and it's also hidden as much as possible in the queue as well. So I've hidden it with the fences along here, and likewise hidden it along here as well as much as I can. And I'll just put some vegetation and stuff in here. So anyway, that's this update. So like I say, this has been recorded with stealing a few hours in game. So That's why there's quite a lot to see on this one. So my next plan of attack is to finish off the fencing, start getting these shops and everything done, and then we can start tying up the area, and then we can get the episode out. So anyway, I've talked enough. Let's crack on. Here's the next update. Alright, so we've just had a breakdown, and this is the perfect opportunity to show you everything that I've done up to this point so far, because it's mainly fences and mainly padding and everything. But you can see in the background I've also done quite a lot of work to some of the buildings and everything as well. So let's have a look, shall we? Let's see what we've done. And so I've worked on this queue area quite a lot. So we already know that I've designed 2 essential cattle pens and then the queue to wrap around the actual first drop and have a feature of the drop and the loop. And so I've just started to decorate the fencing and everything that comes along here. And I've tried to keep the fencing as simple as possible. So I'm sort of going that Oakwood, slightly more budget than Oakwood would have done, but not as high budget as the likes of Alton Towers, Thorpe Park and everything would do. And so all I've done is I've just laid down this concrete pad, put in the fencing in the middle, and it's just one great big cattle pen queue, and then likewise with this one as well. And I'm still toying with the idea of whether I would put some kind of rope in here that we could cut this off, and then maybe a rope along here to cut this off. I'm going to do that when I do the fine detail pass. So that with this being the penultimate update, that's my next thing, is to add the vegetation and add everything, the fine details, you know, the bins, the benches, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so I didn't really focus too much on emergency exits and everything of queues on this one, because it's almost impossible to do that with the way that this is laid out. You've got no immediate exit strategy for this cattle pen queue because of the railway line that's going to be coming along here, and then the path that's coming down this way. You might put some kind of an exit here, but I'm not going to do that in this episode. That'll be in a future episode that I add that. So just have in mind that I have considered the exit strategy of this queue, and it would probably be here, but it's not going to be in this episode. It's going to be something that I'll do later on. So, and then coming around this way, I've used concrete padding all along here. So it's TMTK items, and as you can see, I need to do a bit of tidying up along here. And this is because this whole queue is on a real slight incline, so you can't just lay it flat, and you can't make steps of it. It's all on a slight angle, and that's why we've got this slight gap here. It's because it's not actually meeting properly on the angle. So I just need to do some tidying up on that bit. But I quite like how this has turned out. I've put the don't die fencing all around the outside, and I've just re-added the catwalks to the track as well, and all of the don't die signs as well all along here, and it's coming along quite nicely. I mean, this is the sort of view that you would see from an actual queue of roller coaster. It looks really good. I'm quite happy with how this is turning out. This station area as well has turned out really nicely with this corrugated roof. I quite like how the light is dappling and everything. And then when we come around to this side as well, this TMTK fencing is sort of lining off the railway quite nicely. So once we've got some vegetation just to make it a little bit more overgrown, this is going to look good. And I've started to do all of the terrain painting here as well. So we're using rocks, we're using dead grass, we're using some of the flowers and everything just to give it a bit of personality. Then I'm going to come along and use some of the vegetation items just to overgrow it slightly. You don't want it too overgrown because it's going to be in use. It's the miniature railway of the park, so it's going to be well kept and it's going to be kept clear. But you do just want some kind of vegetation and everything just popping out where it might not be easily maintained. And so I've also started to vary the terrain height as well. It was exceptionally flat. I didn't want it to be flat. I wanted it to have some humps and some hills and some undulation. So this is what I've done. And I started to plan sort of some kind of maintenance strategy here, where I've got a dirt track that comes through the centre of the roller coaster. I did originally have it as tarmac, but it was just too imposing. It didn't feel like it would be right. So I just put a dirt track, and you might be able to get a van or something along here if you wanted to. You'd be able to bring a van from what will be the backstage area into this area of the ride, bearing in mind that's the big area of the biggest area of the ride that you'd want to maintain. So you'd want access at some points. You wouldn't want to have to bring a vehicle all the way around this way to come all the way back and then to come round again. You'd almost want an exclusive access point that comes through the central part of the ride. So that's what I've done with there. And I've also again started to paint the terrain where it's all starting to wear the grass down and the grass isn't growing underneath it as much, and think along the lines of the rain dripping onto the rails, and it's probably going to be oily, it's going to be a bit polluted, and it's dripping down onto the grass here, and it's sort of killing the grass, or it's not so well maintained, or you know, it's okay, it's doing what it needs to do, but yeah. And then we started to do the buildings. So here we are with the buildings. Done all of the fencing along here. Ride photo booth, then this is pretty much finished. It just needs its final touches. It needs its actual ride photos and its staff putting in. So this has turned out nicely, actually. I did want to put a bit more effort into this one than I do the other ride photos. So we've got some filing cabinets that would be along here. You typically find all of the cardboard inserts or the cardboard sleeves that you put the photos in. You tend to find those being stored in here. There's the computer over this side, and there's a computer here. Unfortunately, we don't have the printers, and I don't really know how to make them a thing, because all of the pieces that we've got in the game are too big to do the printers with. So if anybody knows of any TMTK item printers that we can use for the ride photos, then absolutely send them my way, because we're going to need them on here. You know, they're big pieces of kit, they're big units that come together to make these ride photos. So they would need to be sitting on this unit somewhere. But for now, I've just cluttered it up with some souvenirs and stuff, just to, you know, fill in the space. Yeah, so I've just put the other posters on the walls as well, just to bring it to life a little bit. And then the finer detailing. So you've got your fire hazard, you've got your mop bucket, yeah, you've got your wet floor sign next to the electricity point. But it's okay, there's a sign there. There's a sign there to tell you it's an electricity point. And you've got a fire break point up here, and you've got your fire extinguisher. This is very much not what you would need next to the electricity unit. This is asking for trouble. Water, but it's fine. It's a fire extinguisher. That's what it represents. And then, oh, loud. Then we've got the storage boxes underneath here. So that's what we do with all of the other shops in here. And then over here, you've still got your fire break point, and you've also got your emergency exit break point. So it's key fob entry. So if your key fob isn't working to let you out, or the push to let exit button isn't working, then you can break the green one and it opens the door for you. So then I just need to put the keypad this side. And then we've got the ride area perimeter fencing again. It's quite nice. And I've put down this concrete pad just to make it all one big concrete pad. Now what I need to do is just break it up with some stuff. So we're talking things like bins, benches, picnic tables and that sort of thing. Just to give it a bit more character, because at the moment it is just a bland area. It needs some love and attention, I think. I've got some games here. I'm toying with the idea of grabbing a TMTK pinball game or something that's just to fill in this space, because I don't really want to use the vending machines. It doesn't feel like it would be a vending machine area. So I think that's my next thing. But I just wanted to show how this has been set up anyway, so you can see it with the building. And again, most of this is TMTK. So these are the TMTK girders that are on there, and then so are these. And then the roof is the same. It's that desk again, and then the beam as corrugated roof. Turns out quite nicely. I wanted this idea that this is going to be temporary. It's not going to be something that they would have spent a lot of money on. It's just something they threw up because they were monetizing the area as cheaply as they possibly could. And so as a result, it's got a bit of design to it, but there's not really much design. So you've just got this two-tone wall where you've got a foundation, a metal wall, and then there's the beam that sits on the top, and then on the top of the beam sits the roof. And so that's what I've gone down. And you've just got this element of not concrete, this metal structure right the way across. And then the back beam is thinner than the side beams, just to give it a little bit of variation on the actual building itself. And then it's got a little bit of a foundation that's been coloured. And then the colour scheme is very much closely matching the actual ride itself. It's the yellows, it's the browns, and it's the greens. And then the red just comes in just to accent a slightly different colour, just to give it a bit of variation. And then coming over to the food stall, this is exactly the same principle as the ride photo stall, but obviously these are functional in game, and so we treat them slightly differently. So I've used the same colours for the actual countertop, and I brought the countertop across so that we're hiding the colours of the in-game native countertops. And I've cluttered it out with some TMTK stuff. So we've got the napkin dispensers here, we've got the bottles, we've got a couple of coffee cups and everything that are in front of Miss Foxy, and then the napkin dispenser again over by Missy Good. So it just gives that little extra stuff on here. I haven't gone OTT. I've put the ceiling in the actual shop itself, so it's got a bit of lighting. But that's about all. Oh, and I've also put the card reader actually on all of the stalls as well. so it just gives that little bit of extra detail. But the shops themselves, they're fine as they are, like they're detailed enough as they are. You just need that little bit of clutter just in the front to bring it to life, really. And then I'm just starting to work on the entry strategy here. So I need to find out how I want this to actually look in terms of design. I don't know if I want the ride sign here or if I want the ride sign at the actual entrance of the ride. I'm not really sure. It's going to come together when I start putting the flowers and everything in, I think. So yeah, and then over in the maintenance area is the last thing to show you. I've put the roof on, so this is now capped off quite nicely, and you can look through the window and it's all there, and you can now see, look at this, we now have a back entrance. So I've just put in another sort of sliding door, garage door style thing that's just in here, and it's brought it to life actually quite nicely. You've now got some sort of loading point for the back, so you can now bring a lorry, back it up into the maintenance area. You can just shove everything you need straight into the back of the lorry. Job done, especially if it was a flatbed. So the flatbed lorry would load in here, and this track would be about the same height as the flatbed. And then I've just put in some exit signs as well, just to finish off the area, just to bring it all together. And then again, we've got the corrugated roof, and it's come across really nicely. It looks really good. Really pleased with how this has turned out as well, especially with these I-beams. These come out really well with the connectors and everything. I like how this has come about. It's a very solid but temporary structure, isn't it? It's cheap but well done. It's that idea of generic done well rather than looking bad. So I like how this has turned out, and I'm liking how the area is turning out as well. It's coming together. It's getting its own little bit of character now, and it's going to get even more character when we do the areas around it in future episodes. So when we do the car park, when we do the backstage area, it's going to bring this area that we're building now, it's going to bring it into the entrance area, and it's all going to flow quite nicely. So anyway, that's enough of me talking, because that's 12 minutes. Didn't even notice it was that long. So I'd better crack on and finish this off. So the next update is going to be final. Here we go. Alright then, we're done. So we have a coaster name, we have a whole brand new Eurofighter that's just opened at Reigate Lake, a Centurion. So it kind of felt when I was building this that this would be one of the most recent additions, and they would have added it for something like a centenary anniversary, you know, where you have a park that's been open for 100 years and they do something special for it. So it kind of felt like this fitted into that theme, especially when we're dealing with the area that we're in, being so close to the car park. It's a bit of an off the cuff area, off the shoot area, so it felt like they would have put something in and squeezed it in just for their 100th anniversary. So that's where this has come from. So it's now got a bit of a cheap and easy sign. We've got all of the safety signs and everything around it. The queue signs I use in all of my parks. I think I want to do a new design of queue sign, but this is good for now. It tells you that it's 55 minutes, and it's slightly bigger than the TMTK one that's out there at the moment, which is also really good. But I find that queue time signs tend to be a lot bigger than the ones that are on TMTK, so that's why I use my own with the screen instead. And so I've done all of the detailing. So we've now got some foliage, we've now got loads more signs, we've got loads more detailing and things and stuff that's been added to the area. So let's take a tour, shall we? So we already know before I do this tour that this area out the back, outside this fence area here, the back of stage area, and also the railway station area, that's going to be done in a future episode. So don't panic about those right now. We're just looking at the Eurofighter, and we're just looking at the actual whole thing itself. So here's the entrance area then. You've got the railway line that's coming through here, so I've just put the signs down on the road, beware of the train, and then the yellow warning sign so that you can see it coming, stand behind it, etc. And I expect when I've got it running and I can trigger the objects, I'll put some kind of bell sound, you know, the ding 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 kind of bell sounds in here, just to stop people from crossing when there's a train coming. Remember, we've got to think of your partially sighted guests as well as the ones that are physically able. And we're going to fight with the autosave, I think. And so yeah, we are. So we're going to come into this area then. So we've got a bit of a narrower road, and I wanted this feeling of a bit of claustrophobia. Like I say, they fitted in as much as they can in the small space that they've had, and that meant trading off some of this path area for some of the ride, particularly as it comes quite close to the path. So I wanted this element to be there. And I've also just put all of the growth throughout all of the footers. And so remember, and I saw this in Jeremy's video about the idea of fitting in your plant around your terrain and then fitting the rocks around that and everything. And that's what I've done here, is I've sort of made it fit around all of the footers and everything where it might not necessarily be so easy to maintain. But also remember as well that nature doesn't respect boundaries. So it doesn't respect the fact that you put a fence here. You're going to have things growing through fences, and it's that adds the extra part of the realism. So even though this is strictly clipping, it's actually also okay to do that because it would be growing up over the top of the foundation. So, and I think Jeremy covers that in his video as well. It's like actually make sure that it's natural. Fit it in where it does. It slots in like a jigsaw, but still make sure that it's all natural. It's fine for it to clip if it has a purpose to clip. That's the way that I deal with it anyway. Because this would be growing over the top of the foundation. I've added in the ride photo sign or the ride photo bits. I've stolen this directly from the Swarm. This is essentially the Swarm's setup for the ride photos. I don't think you'd need one either side. I think one on one side would be perfectly sufficient. I think Saw the Rides is only one, but I've just put the two in anyway, just to make it there, so it's obvious that it's there and you can see it from the road. And then we come in this way then, so I've just completed all of the queue line pathing. I've put in all of the stuff that we needed. So we've got picnic benches, we've got bins, we've got signage, we've got the rail. I've tidied up. I've tidied up all of the concrete that was out of place as well. I've added a real tiny little subtle Centurion sign that's hidden into the ground. I kind of like that. It sort of beckons you into the area really. Put some clutter around the back here. I think I showed this on the last update, but I've just sort of touched this up and made sure that it's looking clutterable. And I've also put the curb around as well, just to give it a finite area. But I've also wanted to make sure that the curbing is one level. So because the actual ground isn't, it sort of goes down slightly. So I've just accented this idea of it being on a terrain height slightly, just by having a flat curb along here. And then we've also come into the actual shop area, so not much has changed here. This was all ready, but it's now kitted out with all of its stuff that it needs to, and it's looking good actually when it's the ride behind it. The sightline here is actually a really good sightline. I'm pleased with it. How it comes over the top into the brake run and then down, and then you've got the 0G roll just behind here that you can see as you're buying things. So I like that. I like that view a lot. Over in the games stall, I did download in the end a gunslinger thing from TMTK. Now I just put another vending machine next to it, so it's now just filled out as a row of things, a row of stuff, just that you can go and play with. So it's still a usable area, but it's also decorated. And the power thing that was there is still behind. There it is, it's still there. So I didn't remove it. Obviously it needs to be there for that reason. Over in the ride photo area, I've added a bit of a water fountain on the side. We don't use these in the UK much. We have a couple of places where you have water fountains, but we tend to use actual taps, drinking water taps, as opposed to water fountain taps because they're more hygienic, especially with our health and safety laws. But I've added it in because this wall needed something. In an ideal world, there'd be a sign here, I think, but I might try and grab one and see if I can add it in later. In the actual photo booth itself then, not really a lot has changed. I managed to find a phone that I can use, so I need to go back and add those into the offices as well. And I've added the exit signs where you would find exit signs as well. And I've noticed as well that these business people are way too tall. So I use the idle business people as staff, as you already know, but it turns out that they're actually too tall for the doors. And I thought, no, maybe the doors are the wrong size, but it's not. When you compare them, especially in the ride area, to the actual people, they are actually quite a lot taller. So, revelation. And then we've just got the ride photos from the exact point of the camera, just along the top here, just to give that a bit of life, a bit of meaning. Added some disabled signs here to say that this is a disabled access for this ride. This area was a bit of a dead area. There's no pathing here either, so it's not even usable. The path itself is a mess underneath this concrete, and that's why the concrete is there, to give it the idea of a pad. So I just decided to throw some tables and chairs here. I don't even know if anybody would want to sit here in real life. It's not a very nice area to be, but I just wanted to clutter it out a little bit, just to break up the stark concrete pad that we had. So that's what I've done here. Then you've got your fences with all of your signage along the side, so the keep out signs and everything, and then you've just got your ride signs here, so you've got your height meters, your extreme ride signs, you know, the don't go on it if you've got heart problems, back problems, pregnant, that sort of stuff. There's your safety signage there. And then coming along here, I've added the danger ride area, keep out for the railway line, and then come across here, added some bins into the queue line so that you can throw your rubbish away. Added the main queue line sign, so you've got your main queue and your fast pass queue direction, so you know which way you're going. Added in all of the lamps and everything along the queue line itself. Nothing really changed with the queue line. All I wanted to do was reintroduce some midday shade, or not reintroduce, to introduce some midday shade into this area, because we don't use queue covers as much in the UK because we don't have the sort of weather that you guys have in America or in hot countries. So we tend not to cover our queues. But what we do is we use natural queues shade instead. So I've just put one massive tree in here, and throughout the day the shadow is cast on the actual queue line itself, so that breaks up the direct sunlight quite a lot and quite nicely. And then just added the foliage and everything around the side of the maintenance shed. And obviously this is all going to become an area that is going to be decorated later on. So inside the actual station itself, no real massive changes, just a few signs that I've added, so the baggage hold, and then the disable sign and everything. So the station is largely as it was before. And then over in the maintenance area, again, it's all exactly the same. I've just added in some slight extra bits. Nothing massive has changed. It's all still, again, as I left it in previous updates. Nothing really tweaked, but the biggest one is outside here. So on the brake run, we've now got a van that's parked here. I think the park would probably make an effort to keep this area as clear as possible. I don't think it would be cluttered as such. You'd still have some sort of clutter, but you don't want it to break the immersive experience. I think this is probably way too much of a cluttering. I think the park would make more of an effort, but it's just there for decoration, design more than anything. And then I've added in the catwalk all along here, and I've also added in the catwalk lighting, and these are proximity sensors. So for the Eurofighters, they have them on the track, and then it marries up to a pad that's on the side, so it can tell you exactly where the trains are. So I've just added these in, and then just added in all of the like the electric fences, not fences, definitely not electric fences. Added in all of the electric boxes and everything that you'd see along the side of the catwalk as well. So that's looking quite nice. That's looking done. And then over in the actual ride area itself, here we go. So I just added some lighting along the catwalk. Now I did some research into this, and the catwalks I've seen on the Eurofighters themselves, they don't have access points, don't have ladders. And the idea is, if you did have to evacuate a train from this point, you'd bring a cherry picker in and get people down that way. You wouldn't actually have a ladder because it's too dangerous for somebody to climb down from this height. So you wouldn't have stairways, you wouldn't have spiral stairs or anything like that. You would get a cherry picker in and you would physically take somebody down safely that way, where you can put them into a cage and bring them down. So that's why this doesn't have any kind of stairway. And the idea is the cherry picker would come in here, the arm would extend up to this side, or your cherry picker actually might be here, would come in this side and it would come across and lift people off and bring them back down to safety. And then I've just put in some tarmac along here just so I know what's going to go on with the next update with the big backstage area that we're building, and then the exit points as well. And I've also just made a road that comes into this way as well, just to get that ready for the idea of bringing lorries and vans and everything down this way when we get to that point, and then just kept this bit clear so we know that it's a road. So that's it. That's Centurion. That's our Eurofighter. And again, one of those projects that I'm really pleased with how it's turned out, and it's going to look even better when we finish all of the stuff around it as well. So like the sightline just becomes quite immersive and it draws you in. So this is turned out quite nicely. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this episode. Thank you so much for coming along, and thanks for your patience with the delay with the episode and everything. So it's really great to have you all coming along. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to know when the next episode comes out, you know what to do. Press the subscribe button. Let me know what you think of this one. Let me know what you think of the actual ride and everything in the comments. Leave a like and so on and so forth. You know what to do by now. But I think, just to end this episode, other than me saying thank you, I think we should probably take a ride, right? Let's go for a ride on this one. So here we go. Take care of yourselves.